Welcome to Beyond Recovery, everybody. This is actually my first show that I've had two guests at once. So Catherine, Kim, thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you, ladies?
Great. Really well. Thanks for having us.
Nice thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, we're doing a little show swap action here today, which will be, I'm very excited to be a guest on your guys' show after this ends here. So super cool. Yeah, let's get right into it. I want to hear, as we mentioned in the little pre-interview, we don't know literally anything about each other at this point, other than we're, follow each other on the wonderful sobriety Instagram, community that's out there. So we reached out to you, and here we are. So let's get into it. What are your ladies' origin stories with alcohol? Whoever wants to go first, and how did you guys meet each other and so forth? Yeah, just let me know about all of it, please.
Yeah, I think we can kind of talk together and kind of explain, how our podcast came to be and kind of what our mission is and why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. We met several years ago. I mean, several years in.
So we're from outside of Boston.
Yeah. And
in a town called Needham.
We used to work out at the same place, and we have a mutual friend. And then we all went out one night and realized we loved drinking.
We loved
together.
We loved party.
And it was a very long night. And that's sort of almost every single time we had ever hung out together was in these instances. It's sort of like you seek people out that will want to drink with you. And Kim, that was
how many years ago was that?
Probably like 7 years ago.
Yeah. So that was, so we met around 7 years ago, and we live outside of Boston in Needham. We're both moms.
Yeah.
And we both, so I have 3 kids. My name is Kim. I have 3 kids, and
I am Catherine. I have 2. Our youngest are the same age, and our oldest,
7-year-olds.
Yep. And Kim had one in between.
Yep. So elementary aged kids. And in November 2020, I realized that I needed to stop drinking. Catherine, within a few weeks after, realized the same thing.
Yeah.
And
I had been realizing, I had been thinking about it, but it was when Kim shared with me. We would always sort of be like, oh, well, I'm really taking it easy right now. It would be these sort of conversations like, I'm really trying to cut back. And that was sort of the commonplace.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I have something to tell you. I actually am sober for like 2 weeks now, and I'm done. And I was like, no way. I'm like, God, if she can do it, I can do it. But of course, I was like, well, I'll try moderation. And, she was schooling herself through books and podcasts and everything. And she's like, you got to read this, you got to look at this, and just, be aware of what moderation looks like to people who really, really, really like to drink alcohol in excess. And that's kind of where we were. So that really jump-started me, and it's been growing from there in terms of our strength in sobriety. The podcast came out of this common incredible shift in our lives.
Yeah, I think so. Like you always said, Catherine, our common ground was always drinking, and we always kind of came to each other when, we found each other when we were out at parties and out at bars, and the one bar in Needham. And when we would find each other drinking the next day, when we had a particularly bad night, when I was really hungover the next day, I would maybe send a text message to you and say, oh, that was fun last night, kind of looking for because I knew that you were probably feeling just as crappy as I was and hungover. So I was kind of for that comfort in that friend. And we always kind of found that common ground in that we were going toe to toe with drinking and late night. But we did find our, our friendship kind of ebbed and flowed, and we didn't talk to we didn't see each other during COVID. And I think that our friendship has strengthened in the last 18 months since we stopped drinking. And our paths to sobriety are both very different in the end, because I really my drinking really, really ramped up at the end. And there was a lot of sneaking around and lying and things like that on my part with my drinking. Whereas for you, it was just kind of like a slow kind of come to, you kind of came to a realization that,
Yeah.
you just didn't have a healthy relationship. Whereas I was spiraling out of control.
And not to say that I didn't ever spiral. It's all relative, right? But I just feel like I knew it was the root of all of problems in my relationships, my relationship with my husband. I would not be truthful with my mom, and she'd be like, "Oh, are you hungover? You don't No, I'm fine," that kind of stuff. But at the end, for me, it was my father passed away in September 2020. And he would say to me before he passed away, he's like, if you just stop drinking, a lot of your problems will go away. And I'm like, yeah. Once he was gone, that, I realized, I don't know, it's like as though he was always my person I'd go to. And I realized now I have to grow up in a different way as an adult, where, okay, I can choose to walk the path of a great man who knew what I needed, and it's time for me to step up. And it just, timing was perfect for us to come back together with this goal in mind for our lives.
Yeah. So we just threw a lot of information at you, Matt. And we just
it's great. It's awesome. Yeah.
To be honest too, if it really was.
No, I'm scribbling a lot down, so don't worry. That's I find when I want to give as much breathing room for folks that come on the show to just don't feel like there's ever a time limit on it. And meanwhile, I scribble everything down and try and come with some worthwhile questions afterwards. I love the story though. It's fantastic, and thank you for sharing, both of you. There's a lot of parallels, but like you say, there's a lot of, there's some ebbs and flows as well, right? So there's a lot that are similar about your stories, but then, Catherine versus Kim, as far as like for you, Catherine, I'm imagining this, what you were mentioning, that the pivotal point with your dad and using that as like okay, this is the time to do it. And at the same time, Kim is very much still not quite there. But then you have this friend that's, that sort of resurfaces coming out of COVID times and saying this, sharing that, hey, I'm 2 weeks sober. And it's just like, boom, okay, let's do this. Right. So there's a lot of cool things in there. I just want to, I like to take specific topics and riff a little bit. What did moderation look to the both of you? You did mention that it does look, and I'm specifically curious about like sort of justifications, different things you tried to quote unquote moderate, and that sort of thing. So if you don't mind kind of going down the path with that one, please.
Yeah. You want me to go?
Sure.
Okay. So for me, I definitely tried to moderate quite a bit, because my husband would approach me when he was worried about my drinking, and it would be after a particularly wild Saturday night, and I maybe drank too much, and it was obvious that I blacked out, and he would sit me down the next Sunday morning and say, I think we have to talk about your drinking again. And it was sort of a pattern of behavior over the years. And I would say this probably went on for 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years. And I would sort of dial it back, and I would promise him, okay, you're right. I drank too much last night. I'm gonna be on my best behavior from now on. I'm not going to drink like that anymore. And I genuinely had myself convinced that I was going to drink less from then on. Like I wasn't going to black out anymore. I was going to be the kind of person that could go out on a Saturday night and not have more than 3 glasses of wine. I would have water in between my drinks. I would make sure I had a full dinner before I went out. I wouldn't have any pregame drinks at home. Like I would create all these rules for myself, and we wouldn't go out with certain people because certain people brought out a side in me that made me too wild, like had all these parameters in place for me to behave. And it was like I was a child, like I had all these rules, and I knew I needed them because I was out of control, and it would work for a little while. So I felt like I was in control, and we wouldn't keep any bottles of wine in the house, because if we had wine in the house, I would drink it all. So we would get it out, and couldn't have vodka in the house, the same kind of thing. So it was absurd, but it worked for maybe like a month or two. And then we'd have like a big charity event, or we'd have some big birthday party, or, you know, a holiday, 4th of July, I don't know what it was. And then I would find a reason to drink. And it was just like a slippery slope. And I would get right back into my old ways.
Yeah. I think you said it best when you were saying like a child.
Yeah.
Because there's so many childlike behaviors of sneaking around that we both would do, or rule setting to keep, you know, an unruly child in line.
Yeah.
And what we didn't know, what came with sobriety, and you only know once you're there, the freedom that it brings you. And it really sets you free to be who you are, develop naturally.
Yeah.
To create just normal rules for your life, you know, and it's not even like a rule-based thing. I don't know if you can even say rules, but there's just
be
living
comfortable being you, and you don't
Yeah.
have to sneak around and lie to yourself.
Right.
That's what it was when I was moderating. I was lying so much to myself,
And the pressure.
and it was so obvious that I was lying to myself and trying to fool myself.
Yeah.
And it was so crushing, because I would go out to dinner with my husband, and I would sit there and I would think, I just want another glass of wine. And I would obsess over it, and I couldn't even enjoy my dinner with him, because that's all I would think about when I was trying to moderate.
I was watching a show on HBO, The Staircase, and it's this whole involved true crime story about
I started
family.
watching that. Yeah.
One of the brothers is an alcoholic. He has definitely issues with alcohol, and they're at dinner, and you just see him waiting for his drink, and he's so agitated and so frustrated and angry, and he asks for a double tequila, and they didn't come, and then he snaps snaps at the table, and he's so not present. And I'm like, that is exactly what that is. It's like the snapping or the not, but the not being present in the moment and enjoying, because you're constantly either trying to
think about your next drink, plan it.
Yeah. Or when you're moderating, thinking about that next drink, but knowing you can't have it yet. It's just like, it's such a waste of
watching
time and
everybody else drink. Like, oh, how many more sips do they have?
Yeah.
Do you think I can order my next drink? Are people going to start ordering their next round? Are people going to look at me weird if I order my next round?
Like on the sly, like that was the sneaking around. So when Kim and I would get together,
we would get together. We'd
sneak together, and it would be like camaraderie, you know?
Yeah.
Every time I was out with Catherine, I'd be like, all right, I know that our husbands were always worried about us. So we would sneak off together and go drink and be like, all right, let's try to ditch them and ditch those losers back there who want to
our keepers.
Yeah, our
keepers.
Yeah. I remember the 4th of July parade, and we snuck off into I don't know, somewhere, and tried to get mimosas at 10 a.m.
into the house. That was sort of like the meeting point for
everybody.
Like,
don't let them
know that we got another one. That kind of thing. Yeah. It was so crazy to think about.
I love the story, how it's so fantastic that you ladies are both on the other side of it now, and you can have this second act to the story in a sense, right? Because it seems like you're very synced up with the and thanks for painting the picture of that moderation, lying to myself, and just painting the picture of how exhausting and how nonstop these attempts at moderation are. See, and you both painted that picture beautifully. It sounded like you were I imagine you were very enabling to each other by the sounds of it. You very much fed into, to your point you just mentioned, these secrets, and it's just like, it's kind of almost like you mentioned as well, the childlike behavior where you can kind of egg each other on a little bit, and it's kind of humorous. It's so interesting. What can you say about that? I guess I think Kimmy, you had mentioned earlier about sending a text message after a particularly rough time, and then just throwing it out there with kind of the testing the waters, like that. Wow, that was a fun night, eh? But meanwhile, inside, I imagine you were feeling quite different.
Yes, and you're like crumbling on the inside, but you're looking for validation from other people. I used to do that a lot. I used to send out sort of like,
how bad are you feeling?
Yeah, how bad are you feeling? Hoping other people would be like, oh yeah, it was awful. I feel so awful today. And I would just want other people to be feeling just as terrible as me to make me feel better about my hangover.
Yeah.
Right.
And more times than not, people will be like, oh, sorry, you're not feeling good. Like,
Mm.
like, oh, too bad for you kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, yeah, you didn't think a lot last night.
we
Sorry
go-
about that. Like,
we go
Right.
work out and
Yeah.
it would be normal to go hungover and know that if we sweated it out, we feel so much better. But
Right.
it's like, that's just so wrong.
yeah, it was
So wrong.
so backwards.
Can you imagine like all of that poison in your body and you're going to like exert yourself with still that poison in yourself? It's what people do.
Yeah.
It's what everybody
It-
tends
it's-
to be
Yeah.
doing.
It's what our
if they're not
it's
sober.
what our the culture and the people we surrounded ourselves with,
Mhm.
and this mommy wine culture, and what many of our friends were doing, and yeah, the people we looked for to
Mhm.
be around, and you know, we're trying not to surround ourselves by that environment and that culture as much
Right.
anymore, and it's tough though because it's everywhere. Alcohol is everywhere.
So
I was at a party on Friday night and it was a birthday party. And at the end of the night, I'm like, what can I do to, help you out? What can I do? And she's like, will you put all the wine bottles in the cooler just to kind of stack them, get them out of the buckets? And I was like, yeah, sure. And as I'm doing it, it didn't even dawn on me that I was dealing with wine bottles until I'm like, oh, that's so funny that I'm doing this. And that's great that it
Yeah.
really wasn't a thing that I was handling all of this stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, holy shit, this is a lot of booze. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's amazing.
In the past, I would have been like, oh, I'm gonna take a sip from this one. and this
yeah.
Yeah.
Samples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I love the quote. I want to say, I think Catherine had mentioned, to develop naturally. Like you can allow yourself to develop naturally now. So, and you're spending a lot of time redefining some of these things, like the case in point where you just mentioned the party last night, right? That you're at. How has it changed for you ladies as far as the circles of people that you're in? I imagine there is still some people that, are kind of window shopping a little bit, seeing how you two are thriving in sobriety, but aren't quite there yet. Like, and then there's other people that maybe aren't even in your life anymore. What are the dynamics of like redefining, is the sober version of the both of you to like towards your old life and comparing it that way?
It's all of the above of what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
We have a small consortium of friends that don't drink, but our lives are filled still with a lot of people who do, and I'm okay navigating around most of them. They've accepted it, and I am me to them, which is great. There are some that really kind of have distanced themselves, and that's okay. That's been part of the journey to realize that life is a mirror, and we present that we see in them what either we don't like in ourselves or we don't want to see. What we don't want to see and what we don't like in somebody else is usually what we don't like in ourselves. So I'm trying to be as cognizant and present with that and just carry on.
I mean, I echo all of that. I agree. It's been hard navigating the changes in some of these friendships and wanting some of the friendships to remain the same, but they're not. So that's been challenging and disappointing, I would say. But it is what it is. And
oftentimes with women, it's not a live and let live, right? We have expectations of a relationship, of a sorority type, like you're my ride or die, and then that's how we define each other. But what we don't often recognize is that when growth happens, there are growing pains, and that you're not always growing together. And and I think that's where it is with a lot of different friendships.
And everybody has had different reactions, and some have had just no reaction and just kind of have silently crept away, and that's been sad. And you just want more from those people. You want something, and you don't always get anything, and that's kind of a bummer.
It's a constant reminder of it is what it is. To try and remind ourselves that that's the way it is.
No,
I think for both of us, there were people that stopped including us in things because of their own discomfort. And I necessarily wouldn't really want to even be going to some of those things because, there's a lot of drinking at certain parties or whatever. But I still want the option to say no,
Right. Yeah, I
and
get you.
that's the thing. It's like people just assume I don't want to be there anymore because I don't drink. But sometimes maybe I would, but I just, that should be my choice, not their choice. So that's
right. Like
yeah.
I tend to leave early most of the time, and it's nothing to do with them. I just am feeling it's time for me to go. Not that I want to have a drink or maybe the vibe is changing and they're changing and they're drinking. And maybe subconsciously that is a big part of it. It probably is. But at the same time, I get tired and it's like, all right, I am a social creature, but I'm also quite a bit of an introvert.
I was just about to say that was one of the biggest things
things.
we both discovered
Yeah.
is that we're both introverts. And
Yeah.
I believe that there's a scale of being an
Yeah.
introvert to an extrovert. And I'm definitely more of an introvert. Same with you.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I looked forward to Friday night. I knew it was going to be a great time. That was honestly the first time I was like, oh my God, it's 11 o'clock. I could still keep going. I couldn't believe it.
I think
It was the
with
right setting.
when before we stopped drinking, we both thought we were huge extroverts and we were like, oh my God, we
Life of the
love
party.
Yeah, we really treated ourselves as like the life of the party. We acted like we were. And I used alcohol to make myself social and acted like the life of the party. And now I have realized that I still like being with people. I still like being with my friends and going out, but I am very quickly depleted when I am out in social situations and I get really tired. So, I am a huge introvert. I just need to extract myself from a situation pretty quickly and I can't be out until 10, 11 at night anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just so tired.
Yeah.
So
Get it. I know I'm still tired.
I love the I'm hearing a lot of just like I love the how attuned both your self-awareness is, and it seems to be a very important pillar in sobriety and recovery. What else can you say that has come out of it that's either was expected or unexpected out of the both of you, as far as like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting this personality trait to come up? You kind of touched on, oh, I guess I'm more introverted than extroverted. Like I say, definitely some self-awareness in there. What else can you say, like specifically to if somebody's listening this kind of is a little bit sober curious too, like what else have you guys both gotten out of this last year or so?
That's a good question.
It is a really good question. I definitely think that being an introvert was a huge surprise to me.
I think it was social anxiety for me. I didn't realize that it was being social was an underdeveloped quality of mine. And I thought where I was super social, I am sociable, but I used the alcohol to handle any situation in any situation. And I had done that since high school. So when alcohol was around at those pivotal times and in high school where, you're kind of figuring partially who you are, figuring that out, you don't really know how to be social if it's always there and that's the crutch. So the anxiety for me at times was, and again, it's a scale, but for me personally, it was crippling when I felt like, oh my God, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. And that wasn't how I wanted things to be. And that would be early in the night, so now I have, if that speaks to anybody, there are things you got to tell yourself you have to do before you go out. Things that you can have your out, but if you want to stay, part of you wants to stay, you got to be able to leave the situation and go have a moment for yourself, take some deep breaths and just sort of reset yourself and know why you're there and what you want to achieve out of the night. And then that's built over time, which has been good.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great. I would say for me, what I've learned about myself, besides the fact that I'm an introvert and I like to go to bed by 8 o'clock, is that I mean, I guess this kind of goes along with it, that I really do need my time alone. I really need, as a mother, I think I used to think that to be a good mother, I had to give them all of me and like give and like
All the
juice
time.
all the time. That was what it meant to be a good mother. It was like, we have to go do mini golf today at 8 o'clock, and then we're going to go do this at 9 o'clock, and then we're going to go to the pool. And, you know, I had to have like a really good, you know, scheduled day for them. But I have realized now that it's important for me to have those those bits of downtime alone to recharge, because I would, at the end of the day, at like 4 o'clock, I would just like, I would be so burned out and I would just snap at them. And that's when I would start to drink. And it took a long time for me to realize that I could just like have 5-10 minutes away from them throughout the day to just sort of like take a deep breath, recharge, you know, because I have 3 little kids. They're close in age. They're a lot of energy. And we're coming upon summer. So I'm kind of reminding myself of this. But I don't need to wait until the evening till they're in bed, because now they go to bed at my boys, 9 and 10-year-old go to bed after me.
I know, right?
And or how old are my kids? 10 and 11-year-olds. I don't even know how
but
they
no,
are.
they go,
But they go to bed after me now. And so I can't wait until nighttime to have my downtime anymore.
I know.
In which I used to do, I would wait until the night and I would get drunk, basically.
Yeah.
So what I've learned is that I need to take little moments throughout the day to meditate, breathe, you know, go for a quick little walk.
Yeah, any of the things
Any
that
of those little
yourself.
things that you can do to kind of bring yourself back down and reset your mind. Because I realized that I was using alcohol to numb out, escape, get away from them, get away from everything, get away from life. And
that's the you know, the oxymoron with alcohol. It's like you use it to unwind, but it creates so much anxiety for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
And
100%.
that science is out there, but it's so hidden underneath all of the marketing with everything with booze. And you know, it needs to be more in the foreground of everything. And it's just, people don't realize how bad it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's a great answers on both sides. And a great segue there. You mentioned it has to be, you know, it's something it should be more aware. Let's get into what both your ladies' missions are. Like, you have a wonderful podcast, Weekend Sober. How did that come about? And what is your missions as far as like, what is the word you're trying to get out there? What's sort of the basis of the podcast? How did it come about? And that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we're just kind of trying to do what a lot of people are doing in terms of
normalizing sobriety.
it and doing away with the stigma of you know, women who are getting sober. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to have an addiction. You don't have to claim to be an alcoholic. You can just decide that you don't want to have a relationship with alcohol anymore, or you're unhappy with the role that it's playing in your life, and you can just decide to stop drinking. We both had different ways that we came to that realization with alcohol. And neither of us consider ourselves alcoholics. And so I think we both just want to encourage women to take a step back, and women, men, anybody. We talk a lot about being mothers. That's why I say women, but we just encourage people to take a step back and reevaluate their relationship with alcohol and try to understand that there's so much more on the other side, and that you don't need it to live a full life.
Yeah. Alcohol has been, and the word alcoholism, you know, it's an arcane terminology that was created to define a relationship with a poison, right? And it was used at a time to, you know, to shame you. And that's why we really don't use the word alcoholism or that we're alcoholics.
Yeah.
I go back
This
and
is like that
forth.
derogatory, negative
Yeah,
term.
and we've done a lot of reading that for us, we want sobriety to be an empowerment tool in your life, not something that you have to stop doing something because it ruins you. And it's just that whole mindset of which way do you want to look at it? Are you missing out because you were bad with alcohol? It's like, alcohol good to begin with, so it's like,
and we always say, like, there's nothing, if you believe that AA is the way for you, it's the path for you, that's fantastic. And we did not use AA, and that's not what we feel is going to help us, but that's to each their own. But I have a blog that I write, and it's KimberlyKearns.com is my blog. And I feel very strongly about sharing my story, recovering out loud so others don't suffer in silence is what they always say. And it's a lot of what this podcast is about. And I'm writing a memoir, and I just want to share my story. If I can help one person, because I know that I was struggling for so long, and I just didn't think there was any other option. I just didn't think that sobriety was even a thing. Like I never thought I could stop drinking alcohol. I just felt like I was going to be drinking for the rest of my life, and I had to figure out a way to make it work for me. And I mean, there were times when I admitted to myself, I'm pretty sure alcohol is going to kill me. Like I remember there were times when I was like, this is what's going to kill me. And I just hope it doesn't happen too soon. Yeah. I mean, it's awful. Awful that I used to think that. So I just want people to know that life is so much better on this side. It's so much better. So
for sure.
That's fantastic. Thank you both so much for coming on your show. I'm excited to be on the podcast that we mentioned. Anything else? You had mentioned your blog there. Anything else that you'd like to promote here? We'll put it in the show notes, of course. But anything else you'd like to mention?
I am you're a recovery coach, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm getting certified right now for mindset coaching, and so
tremendous.
Part of my platform will be relationship with alcohol, and so I'm sort of in that vein right now of figuring out what it's all going to look like for me. But it's definitely a passion of mine that's always been in the back of my mind in terms of helping people become better versions of themselves. So I'm really excited. I have no show note yet.
Coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon. I'll let
That's
you know.
exciting.
I'll update you.
Please do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I imagine you could find your ladies' podcasts anywhere you can find it. There's Apple Podcasts, wherever you choose to consume. Yeah. Exactly. Excellent. Exactly. And any final words, not to put you on the spot. I loved any final quotes, anything that you'd like to say to the listeners.
I mean, I have nothing to say.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you so much.
Opportunity to share our side of this and encourage others, hopefully through our stories.
Yeah, this is great, Matt. Like, this is so nice.
We're really happy that you're also out there doing this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
had a nice community of people.
Yeah,
absolutely. Can't agree more. And thank you both for coming on and being just so open up front. And it's a wonderful story. It's very inspiring. And there's always a little wrinkle or a little twist to everybody's story. And I just love what the both of you are doing. So I feel very fortunate you came on today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks so much.
You bet.